She tattooed another man's initials on her body and still expected me to sleep next to her. AITA for divorcing my wife after she tattooed her lover's name on her body? Here's how this all started. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think my marriage would end over a tattoo of all things. But here we are. Megan and I were together for 5 years, married for 3. I thought everything was going well. You know, we had the normal arguments like any couple. Nothing serious. But looking back now, I can see how things started to fall apart. It all began when we were engaged. Megan has always liked tattoos, which is fine. I have nothing against them or people who get them. It's just not my thing. At our engagement party, she came up to me super excited and said, "Babe, wouldn't it be great if we got matching tattoos to celebrate?" At first I laughed, thinking she wasn't serious, but nope, she was totally serious. I told her, "Look, I don't mind if you get a tattoo. I'm just not interested in getting one myself." She seemed a little disappointed, but at the time she didn't make a big deal out of it. I thought that was the end of it, that maybe she'd mention occasionally, but we're adults, right? She'd do her thing, and I'd do mine. Then we got married. A few months after the wedding, she brings up the matching tattoos thing again. At that point, I'd already told her no, so I reminded her, thinking she'd drop it, but she didn't. Every couple of months, like clockwork, she'd bring it up, and each time she got more intense about it, like she was getting increasingly upset that I didn't want to get a tattoo with her. Honestly, it was starting to get pretty annoying. I kept telling her the same thing. You can get a tattoo if you want, but I don't want one. Simple, right? Apparently not. She started acting like this was some kind of relationship deal breaker, which made no sense to me. Fast forward a bit. Megan gets a promotion at her job. I was really proud of her for it. She worked hard and deserved it. She got transferred to another office with a new team, and she started telling me about this co-worker of hers, Jason. According to her, Jason was a super cool guy covered in tattoos, and apparently he was giving her advice on what kind of tattoo to get. Look, I wasn't bothered by her talking to a guy at work. I'm not insecure like that. But the way she talked about him all the time, that started to make me uncomfortable. It felt like she never stopped talking about Jason and his tattoos. I didn't say anything at first because I didn't want to be that paranoid husband just because his wife talks to another dude. But deep down, I felt like something wasn't right. And then one night, Megan hits me with a comment that completely caught me off guard. We were just chilling, and out of nowhere she says, "Jason says you're not a real man because you're afraid to get a tattoo." I was like, what? Where did that come from? I've told her 100 times I'm not afraid to get a tattoo. I just don't want one. There's a difference. So I ask her, why would you throw that in my face? Sounds like Jason just wants to get in your pants, to be honest. And guess what? She just says, if the shoe fits. I was shocked. What was that supposed to mean? Did she agree with him? Did she really think I wasn't a real man just because I didn't want some random tattoo? It made zero sense to me. We never had issues like this. So I couldn't understand why she was suddenly being so cruel about it. She stormed off the bedroom and slammed the door. I just sat there thinking, this is really happening. I felt like things were starting to go downhill fast, but I wasn't sure if it was just about the tattoo or if there was something else going on. The next few days were awkward as hell. Megan wouldn't talk to me at all. We were barely in the same room, and when we were, the tension was crazy thick. It was like she was furious with me. But why? Because I didn't want a tattoo? It didn't add up. A few days later, she told me she was going shopping after work. Nothing unusual. She did that all the time. But when she came home, she had this look on her face like she was waiting for me to ask what was up. So I asked how shopping went, and she just smiled and pulled up her sleeve to show me a new tattoo on her forearm. Let me tell you, I wasn't expecting that. It was 2 Chinese symbols. She told me they meant strength and independence. Look, I don't speak Chinese, but even I knew something felt off. Megan is white, doesn't speak a word Chinese, so that already seemed weird to me. But what really hit me were the initials underneath the symbols. JWT. I looked at her and asked, what do those initials stand for? And that's when she paused. You know that feeling when you know someone's about to say something that's going to really tick you off? Yeah, I got that. She took a deep breath and said, they're Jason's initials. I didn't even know how to respond at first. I just stood there like, what? You got another guy's initials tattooed on your arm? Seriously. And her explanation just made it worse, if that's even possible. She said Jason had taken her to his tattoo artist and stayed with her the whole time, supporting her while she got it done. So she wanted to honor their friendship by getting his initials. Like, what the heck? I told her straight up that it was disrespectful to have another man's initials tattooed on her body and that she needed to get it removed. But she turned it all around on me, like I was the bad guy. She said I was trying to control her and that I was the one who said she could get a tattoo if she wanted. She even threw in my face that I refused to get matching tattoos with her. So she decided to share the experience with Jason instead. That's when I knew we were in serious trouble. I couldn't believe she was acting like I was wrong for being upset. How could she not see that what she did was completely disrespectful? We barely spoke the next few days, and when we did, it was always about the tattoo. And every time, she just told me to get over it, like it was no big deal. But it was a big deal to me, a huge one. After that whole tattoo incident, I started seeing Megan differently. You know how you're with someone for so long, and then one day you suddenly realize they're not the person you thought they were? Yeah, that's where I was. The tattoo was bad enough, but it wasn't just about the ink on her skin. It was her attitude, the way she acted like I was crazy for being upset. It felt like I was living with a stranger. One night, I was in the living room watching TV, and Megan was on the phone in the next room. I could hear her laughing and chatting. Normally, I wouldn't have cared. It's just a phone call, right? But then I heard her mention Jason's name. Immediately, my ears perked up. By this point, I already had a ton of doubts swirling in my head, and hearing her talk to him just made it worse. I couldn't make out everything she was saying, but it was enough to tell they were way too comfortable with each other. The way she was laughing with him wasn't a coworker kind of laugh. If you know what I mean, I started getting that awful feeling in my stomach. You know, when something just isn't right, but you can't quite put your finger on it yet. Yeah, that. When she finally got off the phone, I asked her straight out, "Why are you talking to Jason so much?" She looked at me like I was being unreasonable and said, "He's my friend, Jake. What's the big deal?" I couldn't help it. I snapped, "The big deal is you're acting like he's more than friend. You got his initials tattooed on your arm, for crying out loud." That probably wasn't the best way to handle it, because she immediately got defensive. "You don't understand our friendship," she told me. "Just because you're insecure doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong." Insecure? That's what she was going with? I wasn't insecure. I was confused. I was trying to figure out why my wife seemed more connected to some random guy from work than to me. But you can't argue with someone who's already decided you're the bad guy. So I let it go, at least a moment. The next few weeks were a blur. Megan and I barely spoke. It felt like we were just coexisting, living in the same space but not really together, if that makes sense. I go to work, come home, and we barely exchanged 2 words. She was spending more and more time on her phone, and I suspected half the time she was texting Jason. Whenever I asked what she was doing, she'd get defensive, so I just stopped asking. But one night, things shifted. Megan came home late from work. She'd been doing that more often, always with some excuse about staying late or going out for drinks with coworkers. Normally, I wouldn't think anything of it, but with everything that had been going on, I couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. She walked in the door, and I could smell perfume on her, and it wasn't hers. I know exactly what her perfume smells like, and this wasn't it. So I asked her, "Where have you been?" She rolled her eyes like I was being paranoid and said, "I told you I went out with some people from work. You don't have to wait up for me every time." "Yeah, but you smell like someone else's perfume," I replied. That got her attention. She looked surprised for a second, but quickly composed herself. "Oh, it must have been one of the girls who hugged me goodbye or something." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something inside me knew she wasn't telling me the whole truth. I didn't want to start a huge fight, so I let it go for the night. But the doubt didn't go anywhere. A few days later, things got even weirder. Megan was getting ready for work one morning, and I noticed she was putting way more effort into her appearance than usual. I don't mean it's weird for someone to want to look nice, but this was different. She was doing her makeup, fixing her hair, picking out a nice outfit. Things she didn't normally do just in the office. It was like she was getting ready for a date or something. So I asked her, "Why are you getting so dressed up for work?" She kind of laughed it off and said, "Can't a girl just want to look good for herself?" Sure, that's valid, but something felt off. I didn't push it because I didn't want to seem controlling or anything. But in the back of my mind, the pieces were starting to connect. The late nights, the calls with Jason, the perfume. It was all starting to add up, even though I didn't want to admit it yet. And then came the moment that confirmed everything. One evening, she told me she was going to a work event and would be back late. I didn't think much of it initially. But later that night, I just had this nagging feeling. You know, when your gut just knows something isn't right? So I decided to go for a drive, just to clear my head. As I was driving around, I passed by a bar we used to go sometimes. And guess what? Megan's car was parked right outside. I wasn't even looking for it, but there it was. My heart started pounding like crazy. I pulled over, not really sure what I was going to do, but I couldn't just drive away. So I walked inside, and there she was, sitting in a corner booth, laughing with Jason, who was sitting right next to her, not across from her, side by side, real close. She didn't see me at first, but when she did, her face went pale like she'd been caught. I didn't make a scene or anything. I just walked over to her, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "Is this the work event?" Megan didn't even try to make an excuse. She just froze while Jason looked like he wanted to disappear. I didn't give her a chance to respond. I just turned around and walked out. That was the moment I knew it was over. I wasn't going to play this game anymore. She could have her tattoo and her friendship with Jason. I was done. When she got home later that night, I was already packing my things. I didn't wait for an explanation. I didn't need one. We both knew exactly what was going on. And I wasn't going to stick around and let her keep playing me for a fool. Hashtag update. One after walking out of that bar and seeing Megan there with Jason. That was it for me. No more games, no more excuses. I went straight home and started packing. I didn't care if it was late or if I had to crash somewhere else that night. I wasn't spending another night under the same roof as her. I didn't even want to look at her, let alone be in the same room. When she finally got home, it was like she already knew what was coming. She walked in, saw my bags by the door, and her whole expression just dropped. She didn't even try to act surprised. She just stood there, sort of fumbling for words, but didn't say anything. Finally, she just asked, "So you're leaving?" I looked her right in the eye and said, "Yeah, I am." "What did you expect?" She didn't say anything at first, just kind of looked at me like she was waiting for me to calm down and change my mind. But I wasn't changing my mind. I was done being treated like a joke. She finally said, "It's not what you think." That's when I lost it. I told her, "Oh, really? So you weren't just sitting in a bar cozying up to the guy you've been obsessed with? The one whose initials you got tattooed on your arm while lying to me for weeks?" Because that's exactly what it looked like. She seemed like she wanted to argue, but she had nothing. I'm not stupid. I knew exactly what was going on, even if she hadn't admitted it out loud yet. She tried one more time. "We were just talking." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "Just talking? Is that what you're going with now?" At that point, I didn't care about her excuses anymore. I'd heard enough. I grabbed my bags and started heading for the door. But before I could leave, she grabbed my arm. I turned around and she had tears in her eyes. For a split second, I hesitated. I felt a pain, like maybe I should stop. Maybe there was still something to salvage. But then I remembered everything. The tattoo, the late nights, the phone calls, and most of all, the lying. I pulled my arm away and said, "This isn't on me, Megan. You did this. You made your choices." She didn't try to stop me after that. I walked out the door and that was it. I didn't look back. I ended up crashing at a friend's place for a few days while I tried to figure things out. It wasn't ideal, but at least I had some space to clear my head. My buddy Ryan was pretty shocked when I told him what happened. He'd met Megan a few times and always thought she seemed so nice and normal. But I guess you never really know someone until something like this happens. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls, texts, and just trying to piece my life back together. Megan tried reaching out a few times. Texts like, "I'm sorry," or "Can we talk?" kept popping up, but I wasn't interested in hearing apologies. What was there to talk about? She had another dude's initials inked on her body. For Pete's sake. That's not something you can just explain away easily. I'm not an idiot. I knew this wasn't just some innocent friendship like she tried to make me believe. I'd felt it all along, but didn't want to believe it. Now it was crystal clear, and frankly, I had no interest in hearing whatever excuses or twisted version of the story she wanted to sell me. A few days after I left, she showed up at Ryan's place. I guess she managed to figure out where I was staying. It's not like I was hiding, but I wasn't exactly expecting her to track me down either. Ryan wasn't home when she knocked, so I ended up answering the door. I didn't want to let her in, but there she was, standing in the rain, looking soaked and miserable, so I let her come inside. I wasn't about to have a dramatic scene out on the street. She came in, dripping wet, and sat down on the couch. Neither of us said anything for a bit. I could see she'd been crying, but I wasn't falling for it. I just sat there waiting for her to speak. Finally, she broke the silence. "I messed up, Jake. I know I did." I didn't say anything. What was I supposed to say? She already knew how I felt. She kept talking. "I never meant for it to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you." I just looked at her and said, "But you did. You hurt me. And not just once. You did it over and over. You lied to me." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know. I'm sorry. I don't even know why I did it. I was stupid. Maybe a few years ago, I would have taken her words to heart. Maybe I would have forgiven her and tried to make things work. But after all this, I couldn't. I wasn't the same guy who could just let something like this slide anymore. I asked her, 'Did you sleep with him?' There it was. The big question. The one I already knew the answer to, but needed to hear from her. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, I did." Hearing her admit it didn't make me feel any better. If anything, it just made it all feel more real. There was no going back now. This was the end. I got up and walked over to the window, watching the rain. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to yell, to scream, to let out all the anger I felt about her betrayal. But I was too tired for that. I just felt empty. You should go, was all I said, without even turning to look at her. She didn't argue. She didn't try to plead her case. She just stood up, grabbed her purse, and left. And just like that, it was over. The divorce process after that was surprisingly quick. We didn't have kids or anything really tying us together, so there wasn't much to fight over. I kept the house. She moved in with a friend, and we both signed the papers. Done deal. We only spoke a few more times during the whole thing, and each time it was civil, polite even, but it felt cold, like we were two strangers, not two people who'd been married for years. When the divorce was finally finalized, I felt relief. Not happiness, not sadness, just relief. It was like a weight had been lifted off my chest. No more pretending, no more wondering if she was lying, if something was going on behind my back. It was finished. I never imagined my marriage ending this way, but I guess life always finds ways to surprise you. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I'm ready to move on. Hashtag update 2 after the divorce was finalized. I thought that would be the end of it. I figured we'd both go our separate ways and move on with our lives. But as usual, life doesn't often go as planned. And Megan, well, she wasn't quite done interfering in my life. A couple of weeks after everything was settled, I started getting random texts from her. At first, they were just sort of polite, meaningless messages. You know, the hope you're doing okay or just checking in type. I ignored most of them because, honestly, what was left to say? We weren't together anymore, and I didn't need her checking up on me like we were still friends or something. But then one night, she sent this massive text, like a wall of words. It started with her saying she was struggling with a divorce, that things weren't going the way she thought they would. She mentioned she was having problems with Jason, of course, and that her life was kind of falling apart. I'll admit, a small part of me felt a tiny bit of satisfaction reading that. Like, well, what did you expect? But another part, smaller I guess, felt bad for her. I didn't want her life to be ruined. I just wanted her to take responsibility for what she did. But it still felt like she was playing the victim. She ended the message by asking if we could meet up to talk. She said she needed closure, wanted to apologize face to face. I didn't know what to do. On one hand, I really didn't want to see her again. On the other, I guess I understood needing closure. Plus, I figured maybe this would be the absolute last time I'd have to deal with her. So I agreed. We met at a small coffee shop, not too far from where we used to live. I got there first, sat down and waited. The whole time I was replaying everything in my head, kind of mentally preparing myself for whatever excuses or apologies she was going to throw at me. When she finally walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked different. Not bad necessarily, but just worn down. She looked tired, drained, like life had really taken a toll on her the past few weeks. It wasn't the Megan I remembered, that's for sure. She sat down across from me, and we just sat there in awkward silence for a few minutes. Neither of us really knew how to start. Finally, she spoke. "Jake, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I realize now how much I hurt you." I just nodded, not really sure what to say. I wasn't there for an apology. I was there to hear her out and close this chapter for good. But she kept talking. "I shouldn't have done what I did," she continued, "with Jason. I didn't mean for things to happen like that. I wasn't thinking straight." I frowned. "You weren't thinking straight? Megan, you got another guy's initials tattooed on your body. You lied to me for months. How is that not thinking straight?" She looked down at the table, fiddling nervously with her hands. I know it sounds bad, but I wasn't happy. I felt like we were drifting apart, and I didn't know how to handle it. I couldn't help but let out a short, sarcastic laugh. "So, instead of talking to me about it, you went to him? You thought cheating was the answer?" She didn't say anything, just sat there looking guilty. But I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. I'd spent too long trying to understand why she did what she did. And now that she was finally admitting it, it didn't feel like enough. A simple, "I'm sorry" wasn't cutting it. I took a deep breath and leaned forward. "You know, Megan, I loved you. I would have done anything to fix whatever was wrong between us. But you didn't give me the chance. You didn't even let me in. You just went behind my back and betrayed me." Her eyes welled up with tears, but I wasn't moved. I'd seen her cry before, and it always felt like a way to avoid taking responsibility. I wasn't falling for it this time. "I didn't want it to happen like this," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." I leaned back in my chair, feeling a mix of frustration and release. Frustration because she still didn't seem to fully get it, and release because I was finally getting this all off my chest. "Well, you did," I said bluntly, "and now you're dealing with the consequences. We're not together anymore, and that's on you." She wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "I know," she said quietly. I don't know what to do now. My life is a mess." I shook my head. "That's not my problem anymore, Megan. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them." We sat in silence for a while after that. I think she realized there wasn't much else to say, that she wasn't going to get some big reconciliation or magical closure. This was just the reality of it. She made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. After a few minutes, she finally stood up, grabbed her purse, and said, "Thanks for meeting me. I needed this." I didn't really respond, just gave a slight nod, and she left. And just like that, I felt this huge weight lift off me. I hadn't realized how much I needed to say those things until I actually said them. The next few weeks were so much easier after that. No more text from her. No more lingering feeling in the back of my mind about what happened. It was done. It was over. I could finally start moving on with my life. And that's exactly what I did. I got back into my routine, started hanging out with friends more, focused on work. It felt good to get back to normal, or whatever my new version of normal was. Megan was in the past, and that's where she was going to stay. I'm not saying it was easy. It wasn't. There were times when I'd think about everything and feel angry or sad or just confused. But whenever those feelings came up, I reminded myself that I made the right choice. I wasn't going to let her drag me down anymore. The truth is, sometimes things just fall apart, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to pick up the pieces and move forward. And that's what I did. Hashtag update 3, and here we are. It's been about 6 months since the divorce. And honestly, I feel like a completely different person. I didn't think I'd get here this quickly, but getting Megan out of my life was like flipping a switch. It's weird how things that used to matter so much just don't mean anything anymore. I've been focusing on myself, kind of rebuilding, getting back into things I enjoy, hanging out with friends, and just living without constantly worrying about someone who made me feel like I was enough. It's crazy how much emotional weight lifts off you when you're out of a toxic situation. But even though things were going well for me, of course, Megan wasn't quite done stirring the pot. One day, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a long one of those you have to scroll to read entirely. At first, I thought it was spam, but as I started reading, I realized it was from Jason. Yep, that Jason. The message was this weird mix of an apology and a passive-aggressive explanation for why things with Megan weren't exactly going the way he thought they would. It was one of those, I didn't mean for things to happen this way messages. But the part that really got me was when he started complaining about Megan. Apparently, after I left, their little relationship went downhill fast. He said something like, "I thought things would be different between us once you were out of the picture, but it turns out Megan isn't who I thought she was." He went on about how she'd become clingy and demanding, and how she just wasn't the same person he bonded with at work. I couldn't help but laugh. Like, what did this guy expect? He got involved with a married woman, and thought everything would be sunshine and roses once I was gone? It was almost perfect. Karma seemed to be hitting him right back. And now, he wanted to vent to me about it? Yeah, no. I didn't reply. What was the point? I didn't need an apology or an explanation from him. As far as I was concerned, they both deserved the mess they'd made for themselves. Let them sort it out. I was moving on. But a few days after that, Megan tried contacting me again. This time it was a phone call. I hadn't heard from her since that awkward coffee shop meeting, so I was surprised to see her name pop up. I hesitated for a second, wondering if I should just let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me, so I answered. Her voice sounded shaky, like she'd been crying or something. "Jake, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I really need to talk to you." I sighed, already feeling drained by a conversation we hadn't even started yet. "What's up, Megan?" And then she just launched into this whole story about how things with Jason were falling apart. She went on and on about how he wasn't treating her right, and how much she regretted everything that happened between us. She actually said, "I made a mistake, Jake. I didn't realize how much I needed you until you were gone. Maybe a few months ago, that would have hit me differently." Hearing her say she regretted leaving might have felt like some kind of validation. But not anymore. I was past it. I didn't need her to tell me she made a mistake, because I already knew she did. "Megan," I said, cutting her off, "we're done. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. I've moved on, and you need to do the same." She was quiet for a minute, and I could hear her sniffling on the other end. Part of me felt bad, but I wasn't getting sucked back into that drama. Not after everything. "I just don't know what to do," she whispered. "I thought things would be different with him, but they're not. I miss what we had." That's when I knew she didn't really miss me. She missed the security. She missed having someone who was there for her no matter what. But she didn't care about me. Not really. She was just upset that things didn't work out the way she wanted with Jason. "I can't help you, Megan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it." That was it. She didn't say anything else. She just hung up, and that was the last I ever heard from her. After that call, I felt free. Like, truly free. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I just felt done. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe without all that weight on my chest. Looking back, I realized everything I went through was probably for the best. Yeah, it sucked. It was messy, painful, and there were days I thought I'd never feel normal again. But now I'm glad it happened. It woke me up. It made me realize what I deserve and what I'm not willing to put up with ever again. Since then, I've just been focusing on myself, reconnected with old friends, picked up some new hobbies, even started dating again. Nothing serious, but it's been fun. And for the first time, I'm not looking for someone to fill a void or fix what was broken. I'm just living my life, and it feels incredibly good. I know people say time heals all wounds, and yeah, that's true to an extent. But for me, it wasn't just time. It was letting go. Letting go of Megan, of the hurt, the betrayal. Once I did that, everything else started falling into place. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that you can't control what other people do. You can only control how you react. Megan made her choices, and I made mine. I chose to walk away, to move on, and it's probably the best decision I've ever made. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. Life isn't perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was. And honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.